Welcome to 626. Welcome back, everybody.
Hello.
How have you been, Tori?
Good.
Yeah, we took about 15 minutes trying to get our dog to not lay in front of you.
Luckily, we were recording all of that.
Yeah, that'll be a good little behind the scenes as she's sitting off camera. Off camera.
Well, you know.
Anyway.
Well, what are we talking about today, Scothew?
We're just diving right in. I'm over here trying to have casual conversation.
Here's the thing. I was thinking to
energy.
myself, and this is going to be me doing exactly what I can't stand. But like whenever I listen to things, or it's like those blogs, like cooking blogs or something, where
All right,
they're
don't
like,
compare us to a cooking blog.
No. It's not that I'm comparing us to a cooking blog, but I'm like, you listen to it or you read it, and like the whole first X amount of time is just like babbling and rambling about things, and you're just like, but the meat of it, like I came here to listen to this, you know?
So
and
you
it's
just
like,
you're saying that we're basically a recipe page where it's like,
I'm not. No.
my grandmother
No,
made these cookies for 30 years.
Back when I was 3 years old.
This is the best recipe I've ever had. And below, you'll really enjoy it.
But I'm going to write for another
Yeah.
5 pages,
Yeah.
and then it's going to be at the bottom.
At least a lot of the recipes have given you the skip to the recipe option. So.
That's true. That's very nice. I do feel kind of bad, though, because those people take so much time to like type it up and like pour their heart soul into it.
I mean, based on what you said, somebody's fast forwarding through this part of the podcast anyway.
I mean, they could be
Trying to get to the meat.
the meat of the episode.
Yeah. I think we were going to talk about, so at the time of this recording, it's not actually recent. It's still actually pretty old, but Lecrae had released a new album.
Yeah.
And on that album, he had a song called Deconstruction.
Also, welcome back, Lecrae.
Was he gone?
I just feel like he made stuff and then he kind of like stepped back. I mean, that's the point of his whole album.
Well, yeah.
Where he was like, he stepped back and he stopped, like,
yeah.
he just took a break.
Yeah.
And then he came back with that album and it was like, oh, okay. That,
Yeah.
like, for what he was going through.
The song on their Deconstruction it sparked a conversation amongst us
Yes.
about deconstruction, because deconstruction was a term I didn't love.
It's such a buzzword.
It's a buzzword right now, which is why I didn't like it.
It's very like, not now, I'm deconstructing.
I'm deconstructing my face.
Like, that's just how it comes off. And I like, I mean, but that's the term.
Yeah. We kind of figured we'd talk and touch on our own like deconstruction and like what that looked like and kind of what that's done for us and like what that means, because that's kind of been the conversation around it. Is like he talked about deconstruction. Deconstruction's still a buzzword. It's a little less of a buzzword than it was, but like what is it? And like I think it needs to be defined, and like kind of we can talk about how it relates to us. So like both of us were born in the church. Like we've been in church our whole life.
Every time the doors were open,
Yeah.
my butt was in a seat.
Doors were open, that we were there.
Thank you, Mom and Dad.
Yeah, which is a good thing. But, and I spoke on this a little bit at my mom's funeral, which was like faith shifts and changes as you get older, because you just kind of start having to own it yourself. Like,
And you also see life as it is, you know?
yes.
Yeah.
And whether we like it or not, I think early on in our lives, like as children, faith is presented as do these things and everything good will happen to you. And then as you go through life, none of those things actually like play out like that. Like you can do good things and still have a bad life, and like things still go wrong.
Yeah.
And it does feel like there is nobody up there watching. And that can be the part that like I think is, and it's also the fact that like you're confronted with other views and opinions and things like that.
Yeah. And I mean, you go through questioning things of like, well, is that possible? Is that a thing? Is that true? Is that, you know?
And you also just surround yourselves with jerks who also identify with the same faith. And you're like, well, if that person is a part of this faith and they're jerks,
Then I want nothing to do with it.
Yeah, like I want nothing to do with this. That happens a lot.
Yeah, it does. And I think that comes into like those, it's, I mean, at the risk of sounding cliche, but I mean, it's true, is like those people aren't God. Like,
yeah,
people are so imperfect. And I mean, you've said it so many times, especially in your preaching days of like,
doesn't that feel like a cop out though?
I mean, it does, but it's also true. Like, we're all driving full speed to drive off the cliff, like doing whatever we want.
I guess I get that, but like my argument for that like is okay. And we're speaking about our faith. Obviously, whatever faith you have is going to be a different. But I think deconstruction can be across any faith or no faith at all.
Yeah, it's
kind of just a belief that's being deconstructing any belief system or like moral code that you have.
Yeah,
but like looking at it from our perspective, like okay, we have a belief system. Like we believe in Christianity. We believe that this is like a faith that is presented and shared through people, and like if it's shared and progresses and grows through interactions with individuals, then shouldn't there be a bigger emphasis on how we treat each other?
100% there should be.
So then like, I think that's my thing that I get frustrated when I hear like a church give the cop-out answer of like, well, those people aren't God. And it's like, okay, they're not, but like your primary method for which you say that the religion advances and grows is the individual, and like it's their ability to share the gospel and spread it, then you have to look at it from the perspective of like, you can't also go, well, no, it's not their, like just because people are jerks to you doesn't mean you should walk away from the faith. But the reason you should walk into the faith is because people were interacting with you and engaging with you, kind of thing. Yeah. That's the way I feel like it's presented sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, because I know that there have been times in my life where I have not been kind to someone.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not going to deny that by myself either.
I have reacted out of anger towards someone, or I have lashed out, or, and it's like,
yeah.
But I guess the difference between that is like, do you take responsibility for being ugly to someone or mistreating someone and go to that person and say, you know what? That was not my best moment. And I am sorry. And, I'm sorry for what I did. I'm sorry for making you feel this way. Like, that kind of thing. So, I mean, I guess that is where the difference is. Like, instead of just using it as a blanket term of like, they're just being mean, and it's like, well, we're just people.
Yeah, I guess I'm speaking strictly on like how churches feel. I feel like churches use that as a cop out of like
an excuse of don't blame, don't. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't walk away from the church because of that, because people are jerks and we're not perfect.
Don't walk away from the church or walk away from the faith.
I guess both. I guess in that situation, you're probably right. They're probably mainly talking about like, don't walk away from the church because like we got to keep our numbers up, kind of thing.
Yeah. So walking away from the church and walking away from the faith are two totally different things.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I mean, I guess we should, because we're getting the cart ahead of the horse here. Kind of. Like we need to probably back up and like go into like, okay, where are you at with your faith?
It had been shaken last year, big time, because it was just one thing after another happening. And, it was kind of like I had a lot of moments where I was like, God, do you even hear me? Are you even listening to me? Because, I mean, I'm talking on my knees in just desperate prayer. And, I mean, it is true, though, like in those moments and in the hard times, like the just life unraveling hard times are the times where you are the most vulnerable, and you pray the most, you go to God the most. And it's like, so it's been hard. And I think that was something that I had, talking in therapy about, like, I had a lot of trouble, and still do, of trusting God, because like going through all of that and like not having my prayers answered the way that I wanted them to be answered was very like, well, I can't trust that he's gonna come through for me. I can't trust that, he does have my best interest at, and it's like, that's hard. And then I also had to like realize that like my version of, what did she say? Because it was really good. It was like my version of like an answered prayer and a good thing happening. Like I only have so much concept and like in my tiny little piece that I can see, versus, God has a bigger picture. So it was like, I'm working through trusting that God's got it, you know? And trust is just more of a big thing. Like, I'm not so much, I think it's easier for me to go, yeah, sometimes people suck. Like, it's just the nature of it. Like, we as humanity do not have best moments. Like, we don't have a lot of good moments. And it's like, you know, I can let that lie and just be like, I can move on. It's okay. Like, it's all right. But it's more so, I think the things that shake me are like the big life change things that happen that are like cancer and losing people you love in horrific ways. And that type of stuff is the stuff that rocks me. So I've been having to kind of work through that and just literally sit there and like when I pray and I just have to be like, you know what, God, I'm having a really hard time trusting right now. Like, because of X, Y, and Z. Here's what's going on. Because that was something that I learned that I had to learn once I grew up was you can wrestle with it. You can say like, God, I don't have it right now. Like, I am confused. I am disillusioned. I am upset. I am angry. Like, I've had many a passionate conversation with the Lord. So it's like, you have to understand that it's okay to do that because you're questioning and you're asking because you don't understand and you're hurting and you're scared and, you know, and it's like, it's okay to be like, what the crap is going on? You know?
Yeah, I think the craziest thing to me is that we have now built a faith, like the empire of the Christian faith is now an empire of media and conglomerate and pop culture. And I think what is just the worst part of it is the fact that we are at a point where in the Bible, if you look at it, like whenever Jesus encounters someone who's like, I don't have faith. Oh, help me, I unbelief. Like there is a response of grace and mercy presented to them.
Yeah.
Whereas right now, if you're like, man, I'm having trouble believing, the church's response is a lot of times to be like, dismiss the argument of like, well, you're just looking for reasons to be upset or
it's gaslighting.
Exactly. It becomes gaslighting. And my issue with it is like, that's why I was so critical of that first statement of like, well, not everybody's perfect. I'm like, that's such a cop out.
Yeah.
That is the church copping out of a response to be like, yeah, like we have failed in that aspect.
Yeah.
And that the American church has bred people who are more competitive in politics and in, you know, the types of things and people you act like than they actually are about the heart of people.
Yeah.
And it's a cop out. And that's where I'm like, I get frustrated because it's like the response there is misguided. Like, we respond to deconstruction with hostility when we should be responding to it with grace of like, yeah, we need to figure out
why you're feeling this way.
Why are you feeling this way? What are you believing?
What
like,
have you been through that has led you to having your deconstruction of things?
And there is a legitimacy to like some part of the faith being like, there are people who are like just using it because they grew up in the church. They don't believe anything that was taught. And that's fine. Like if you grew up in the church and you just openly don't believe any of it, you're welcome. You can walk away.
Yeah.
But like some people are not walking away. They're using it as like they want the attention. So they're like, I was traumatized. It was, you know, they said that bad people go to hell and I can't handle it. I'm like, well, that's like a core aspect of like every faith.
Yeah.
Like if you, that's where you're like, that's where I can understand the like disconnect of the logic.
Yeah.
But like overall, I don't think that's where we're at. And I just don't think the church has fully acknowledged some of its like stupidity in the last decade, 2 decades.
That makes sense.
Where
and
it's been.
I feel like, okay, so where you're coming from, I get that. Like as far as the cop out thing, because instead of, and I mean, you're very big on like, just own your crap. Like, own it. If something's wrong, say, dang, something's wrong. Yeah. So we're going to fix it. What if like, help us to, you know, work through this with you and, you know, that kind of thing. So, I mean, I totally, that makes sense. I get where you're coming from. And I think people are like the church. I keep like itching my nose this way, so I'm not like in front of the microphone. But I think, and this is just my speculation, that I think the churches that are like that, are afraid to admit that they've done something wrong because they don't want to lose the following. They don't want to lose the clout. They don't want to lose the attendance. They don't want to lose the tithing because the church has become, not every church. There are small churches out there that service their communities and they do it well and they love well.
There's
and
also big churches that have done
There
it.
are big churches that, do that. But you cannot argue that the percentage of the huge, like, put on a show kind of churches that are big on social media and big on attention and big on tithing and, like, they don't want to lose their business.
Yeah,
because church has become a business. And
if Broadway production.
If you say, yeah, we did something wrong, then you automatically, like, in your brain, the way that it works is you think, oh crap, if people find out that we did something wrong, they're not going to tithe, they're going to leave, they're going to get mad, they're going to, and all that stuff. And it's like, yeah, but at the end of the day, that's not the point of the church.
Yeah.
Like all of the show and everything.
You ignoring the trauma you've caused people, you ignoring the pain that you've left, you ignoring the people that you've lost. Like, here's the kicker. This is my favorite part. Every church loves singing the same stupid 5 songs over and over again. So it's like the mega church that gets up there and sings, you leave the 99 for the one, and then won't have the guts to leave the 99,000 followers for their one person they've burned.
Yeah.
Is just insane to me. Mm-hmm. Like, it's just so hypocritical. And it's like, it's blatantly hypocritical to the point where, like, that was part of my own deconstruction is just becoming the opening eyes and going, like, I always knew there was a layer to it that, like, for me, that felt like bull crap. But for me, the crap meter went off, and I was just like, the community line, the duty meter, like, it just kind of went off, and I was just like, this is stupid. This whole thing is just a house of cards that is tumbling on itself at any moment. Yeah. And this isn't to be critical of every church. Like you said, there are big churches and small churches doing great work that are diehards, but it was like, we had been around the Broadway production of it for so long. Yeah. That it became this thing where we were like, what is this? Like, what the heck is this whole thing? Like, what are we doing? And like, what sealed it was like when I started seeing pastors, when Instagram introduced the subscription service and pastors were running like subscription services. I'm like, what is it? This is like the penance crap that we dealt with, like, for the Reformation. Like, this is the Catholic Church all over again. Yeah. Paying for prayer. Like, it's stupid.
The other thing I think that you had said was, like, this whole thing is like there are, and again, I keep reiterating, like, there are churches out there and there are tons of pastors who don't do this and who are just there to love their people and shepherd their people and teach and spread the gospel. And that's wonderful. And then the ones that are not, that are all about the show and they're rocking big name brands on stage, and they've got a super expensive car and a super expensive huge house. And it's like, but it's like all of this.
The sad part is you just listed that, and like anybody listening, there's like 5 or 6 people that fit that description.
But I'm like,
maybe more.
But I'm like, all of this it's based on, like, they preach about a man who had nothing. Yeah. They preach about a man who it's about. Like, that's the thing that kills me. It is about a man who walked this earth and loved people with all that he had, and he taught and he spread the gospel, and he had nothing. Yeah. Nothing.
But I mean, that's why I've always said, like, I feel like we do a lot of backbending to justify like these things. We're getting off topic. We are.
I know. I'm sorry, but I mean, it comes with the deconstructing part. Yeah. Because you see things that make you question, and you know,
and there's no like ownership of that. It's just kind of a dismissal of like it is gaslighting, because like if you question any of it, there's always a response of like I often question like the tax benefits given to pastors, and it's like they help smaller church pastors. Like they do help pastors out, but it's like some of these mega church ones are like owning their own planes. They're flying around, and like
why?
There's always, if you question it, the pastor always has a response. I'm just trying to like, you know, God's blessed me with this. Like this isn't, what am I supposed to do with this money? I'm like, not take it, use it for something else. Like
give it to people who need it.
Like I guarantee your staff could use it. Like you don't have to be a millionaire. You can exist in the United States without being a millionaire.
You absolutely can.
Like, you don't have to be. And like half of these guys charge like $40,000 or $50,000 to show up to speak at a conference, and that's just arbitrary numbers that you could just not do. Yeah. That all being said, we're getting off topic. The whole point of what we were saying was, these elements have led to deconstruction in our own lives.
And it's led to questioning.
So, like, what have you done? I guess same question for me. Like, what have you done when these questions have arose? Like, we understand where the deconstruction came from. It came from bad habits of the church that I do think, not to just rank on them, they are owning up to now because the numbers have shifted and people are angry. But like,
Yeah.
what is your process? Like, how have you deconstructed and ended up where you're at now? Which is, where are you at now? Because I asked that earlier and you kind of...
Did I not give an answer?
Kind of, but
I mean, I guess where I'm at is like, I'm still working on trusting God. Like,
gotcha. Yeah.
I'm at a place where I finally I want to go back to church. I want to be in church. I want to be in a community of believers. I want to be ignorant to
the behind the scenes
what's
trauma.
happening behind the scenes, because I've seen way too much of behind the scenes.
Yeah, if you've never worked at a church, just know it's always
I'm done.
chaos.
I'm done. Like,
I always tell when creatives come to me and they're like, yeah, I want to get started in like the creative field. I'm like, my church is hiring. I'm like, oh God, no, run.
Yeah.
Opposite direction.
I'm not.
If you want to burn yourself out of if you want a surefire way to never want to be a creative again and never want to go to church again, go work as a creative at a church. You will never want to do either.
But yeah, I'm finally at a point, because I did have a point where, I mean, good Lord, we served at, and this wasn't this church's fault at all, but we served at one shortly after we left, and it was a different place. We were, just doing whatever, just a quick photography thing or something.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I had a panic attack.
Oh yeah.
I did. Like, the bumper video played and it was gorgeous. It was great. It was pumping up. It was good. You getting the energy great. And I had to walk to my car because that's where I was at. It was, I didn't want to talk to God. I didn't want to talk about God. I didn't want to have anything to do with the church. I didn't want to have, because it was just, to me, I was like, it's not worth it. It's not worth it. And now I'm at a point here, a year and a half later, where God's been working in me. He's been working in my heart. It's been taking time. And it is very insane this is how you know that it's a God thing, but like, it was insane to me that it took such detrimental, life-altering, lowest of lows to bring me back to like rebuilding that solid foundation of faith again.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, because I would have thought that like it would have just been like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I'm done. Thank you. Like, nothing good comes from it. But it is like, it's been nice again, because I was raised in church and that's a part of me. That's a part of, my upbringing. And
yeah,
I loved that. I loved being in the church every time the doors were open. Like, that was an important thing that my parents instilled in me and that yours instilled in you. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that's something it means something to me. And I want to be a part of a community, because it does help to have a community around us, as we have, discovered with our super close friendships that we have, like with our group. And, I want to be a part of that, and I want to grow and I want to learn more.
Yeah. So
I'm at a point of like longing for that now, which I honestly was like, last year, if you would have asked me that, I would have been like, no, absolutely not. Mm-hmm. But now I'm like, no, that's important to me.
Yeah. I think I'm not quite in that position as much as like I am. I was very angry, obviously, during my mom's stuff, angry through all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. But my issue with the church was always that it felt like it was copping out of its responsibilities, and that what I was seeing from both, because I'm big into politics as well, that's like my background. So it was like I was seeing the types of people with the God first life, all that stuff on them, were some of the worst human beings I've ever met.
Yeah.
Like, I had met some of the absolute worst human beings, like the things they would say, the way they would act, the things they would toss out to people. Like, my friends in politics would show me the death threats they would get from people with like, John 3:16 on there, and like people who were people with pastors in their titles.
Yeah.
Like, I had just met some of the slimiest, most disgusting, most despicable, all around jerk of people in the church. And that really did, like, in that song I spoke about in the beginning, it opened up a God wound, because it was like, what is all this? Is any of this really matter? Like, is any of this real? Because it feels like it's not. And it did take another, like, a supernatural experience to bring it back to being something more than what it is, because you do route it in, like, the only thing you can see, which is the people being crazy and awful and terrible. And it's also the reminder that, like, the American church is, like, a small percentage of what the actual church in the world is.
Yeah, I think that's hard to see, because that's all that's in your vision, you know?
Yeah, and it's also the reminder of, like, it is either you're with us or I don't give a crap kind of thing, which sounds terrible. What I mean by that is, like, it is this mindset of, like, okay, if the faith is real, if we're going to follow this, there are going to be people that are going to be jerks, that are going to put John 3:16 in their title and just drop terrible slurs and be awful human beings and be despicable and the worst of the worst. Those people are just going to get in the way. And you know what? We're not going to give them the time of day. We're not going to give them the attention that they're craving and desperate for. We're going to keep working and grinding and going this direction, because this is the direction we're supposed to be heading. And I'm not wasting my time with these people in this direction. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of where I go. Like, I tell people all the time, like, I think there is a reckoning coming for the church in the United States. I think we're seeing it as pastors and mega churches are falling left and right. And I'm fine with it. Perfect. Great. Not wasting my time clapping or crying. I just keep moving, because my faith has grown and shaped in a different direction. It's deconstructed from what it once was. It is far beyond and more complex what's replaced it.
Yeah.
As it's no longer as simple as yes or no. It's no longer as simple as, like, do good and you'll be good kind of thing. It is much bigger than that. But in that, I don't have time now for the little dumb, like, I got to post on my behind the scenes. Make sure you subscribe to my Instagram to get all the cool stuff. Like,
that's not
I got time for that.
That's not the point.
It's not the point of it. And it's all just self-glorification. And they can spin it however they want and whatever they want to do. But I'm not going to deal with them. They'll be dealt with later. And I'm moving on, because it's like, I just think all of them fake genuine, and they're all just trying to build their brand. And I just don't have time for that. And that's why, like, my faith's shaped differently now, in that ability to look at that and go, no, I'm not. It's not my time. Not wasting time with that.
So then would you say that, like, you have reached a point where you have, I know you don't like the excuse being given by the people who mistreat, but would you say that, like, you have reached a point in your faith where you can look at when people are being ugly and say they support God and all that, and they love God and love Jesus, love people, but, like, when they are not nice and stuff, would you say it doesn't rock your relationship with God?
No, it doesn't rock my relationship as much, because I look at those people now and I go openly, yeah, I don't know who they are. Those are crazy people.
Yeah.
And I'm also going to acknowledge that. And I think that's where I get frustrated, when the church doesn't acknowledge, like, no, those are crazy people and we don't need them. Uh-huh. We're not going to stay silent about it anymore. We're going to acknowledge the crazies that are among us and keep moving. Yeah. Kind of thing. But, like, that's kind of where I'm at, is like, nope, don't have. And, like, it's a better place. It's a grown place. It's a place where again, like, you know, I'm willing to go to a church, but, like, definitely want to, like, find one that fits. I'm not looking for the flashy anymore. No. You know, I don't, like, I'm really glad you guys have great laser lights and an awesome band, and you sing, you know, whatever the most popular modern Christian song is right now this week, and you put on amazing productions, and, you know, you have drums fall from the ceilings. Like, none of that stuff impresses me anymore. Yeah. What impresses me is, like, the character of your leaders. Like, how are they going to respond in situations? Yeah. Because it's like, those are the ones I give a crap about. Like,
and I feel like that because I don't care who you are, if you feel that you have been called into a pastoral role, and you feel that the Lord has said, this is where I want you, your first job is to people. Like, and I don't feel bad for you if you're in a difficult situation and someone's being difficult, or someone's being upsetting, or someone's doing something you don't want them to do, or whatever. Your first job is to that person, and you are to show them love, and you are to show them grace, because that is the first commandment, has been, like, it is the main commandment, the most important commandment. Love God others
and love each other.
Yes. Like, you love others. And so you have agreed to the calling that God has put on your life. You have chosen that position. So it is your responsibility to dig deep, and you love people.
I want to elaborate on that. Cause like, what do you mean by like, so like if somebody like, do you still as a pastor love someone who is like openly attacking your family or something? Like not like physically, I mean like online going after your family. Like what is the response there in your mind?
I feel like the response is not to lash back out at them at the same level.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, if your safety is, you know, hindered and stuff, then yes, you would like put into action, maybe call the local police department, something to put into place with that. But that's not something that you're going after someone.
Yeah.
Don't go after people. Don't be rude to people. Don't slash them down. Don't, like if you're having difficulty working alongside them, don't tell them repetitively that, we should fire you. Like we should like that type of stuff. Like the way that you treat people, it's just. Yeah,
it sounds like you're more just like, don't get mad because someone's mad at you. Just don't be a jerk. Like I think.
Just don't be a turd.
Yeah, it sounded like you were really general with your first statement. And it's like.
Well, no, I just mean like, it's not like you're supposed to love and you're supposed to care first. Yeah. And whether you agree or disagree with that person. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I just feel like there's ways to approach people that are like with the church, with the questioning stuff.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Like if someone is, in your congregation or like close that you can, hear some of the stuff that they're saying where they're questioning things and they're like, but I don't really understand. And why is this happening this way? And I don't really agree with that. Instead of saying, you really need to pray more and like you're causing division and you're causing issues, you need to sit down with that person because it is your responsibility to sit down with them and say, hey, I've been hearing that these are your thoughts. First of all, I would like to know if these are true. First of all, because I've heard them, but I haven't heard them from you. So I would like to know if they're true. If they are true, let's step into that together. Like, what do you think has caused you to feel this way? And if it has, like if this has happened or if it's been something that I've done or someone else that has done something, like how can we move forward? Like how can we work through this? Because I don't want you to feel this way. I would love for you to feel like you want to be here and you love it and you're all for our mission and all that kind of stuff. Like there's different ways to approach things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair approach, but I also think, we've been a part of places that approached it like that, but then didn't follow through with actions. Like, I think it's... Well,
I mean, obviously you need to follow through with actions. Like,
no, I'm just saying it's like we've been in places where they've done that and then like the left hand will do an opposite thing. So it's like, I think there's a motivation issue with all that. But again, I think we're diving too far into like personal dramas to get into...
Well, I mean, that's what I can speak from.
That's true.
Because I'm not going to speak on somebody else's experiences. Yeah. But, and plus maybe my experience helps. I don't know. I think circling all the way back around, the deconstruction that comes from my side has more so been events that have happened in my life. Yeah. That are traumatic and very low versus like people. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's me personally. So, and it's stuff like, obviously there's stuff that you see that you're just like,
yours are traumatic events and mine are more personal interactions. Yes. That have shaped and reshaped deconstruction, which is probably why our deconstruction is different. Yeah. And has taken different courses because of where it's ended up.
You're also a more logical person, whereas I'm more of a feelings person, Yeah. So like, you think about, well, why, one of the questions, we both had this question, but like, it was, why does God place terrible people in positions of high position? Yeah. Like why? Yeah. But then it goes back to what's the big picture? Yeah. Like what's the outcome in the end? Like,
Yeah. I've also lessened my grip on that logic. 'Cause like, if you start using logic, like, I wouldn't be talking about this right now because, like, logically, like, I know the theology people will try to spin, but it's like, if God is omnipotent and omnipresent and can do anything and all things, like he could have saved my mom.
Yeah.
But he didn't. So at some point, there's a reason that he didn't.
Yeah.
So, that's the issue you have to grapple with. So it's like, at some point, you do have to lose a little bit of that logical flow, and like, there is an element of trust, and that's where it all comes down to. Like, deconstruction will take your faith down to its roots, and at that point, it can be built again. But there's always going to be the jump at some point.
Yeah.
The trust of like, there has to be a level of faith to this, because there isn't an explanation for everything.
Mm-mm.
There's just not going to be.
And I think we as human beings always want the reasoning behind.
Yeah.
Like,
Which I think ruins Christianity, because it makes, when you start trying to make it make sense and fit into a mold, it becomes this legalistic, moral crap fest.
It's also easier to fall into that because that is clear and concise instructions that you can give people, and it's a way of controlling.
Yeah, it becomes love God, love others, and love America. And that becomes the 3 steps to being a Christian, and that is just garbage. And
it's all like, that was something you see about, because you stepped into the legalism aspect, and it's like, you grow up and you're told, like, don't do this, don't do that, don't do da-da-da-da, don't do da-da-da-da, when in reality, like, it switches with, when you do, like, when you are a Christian and you love God, and, it shifts, turning into like, well, but I love God, so why would I want to do any of those things? Versus, like...
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm saying, like, it's just it becomes the opposite of legalism.
Yeah, but I think it can be, the dangers with what you said, like, if I can critique it, is because the dangers of what you said is because it can become a forced, if you tell people, when you become a Christian, you'll have a change, and you'll suddenly go, why would I want to do these things? It becomes the person sitting there who goes, yeah, I still want to do those things. Did this not work? And then you become the never-ending cycle of the person that goes to every youth conference and is like,
questioning yourself
raise my
constantly.
hand, let me say the magic prayer again and see if it'll work. And then it becomes, this whole thing is legalism again.
Yeah.
It just becomes morality.
Yeah.
And it's like, I got to say the magic prayer. The magic prayer will get me fixed, and I'll go from there. And that's
that was a really good point.
So it's like, I don't want to fall into that characteristic of like this is a process.
It is.
And if it's a process, then takes time.
I feel like it's a never-ending process.
Like, yes, exactly. That's the point.
You're always going to have moments in your life where you question God, and you question purpose, and you question, like,
that's why it's not a finished race until the end. And that's why the whole metaphor is, it's a race, and the race doesn't end until the very end, which is like, well done race. Well, you've run the race, you finished it.
So then can you technically say that it's deconstruction, or is it just faith?
Is it deconstruction or sanctification?
Ooh.
I mean, that could be a thing. That gets into like some theology arguments.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying, like, if it's always a thing, you're always going to have moments where you question. You're always, and it doesn't mean like, when I say always, I don't mean like every single day you're going to go, but God, huh? Why? No. It just means like there will be moments in your life, like you're never going to get to a point where you're like, okay.
Well, yeah, I think you're hitting on the thing that I've talked about for that book, which was like, and this gets into a little more upper level thought processes, but like, and going into it, but like, there's parallels that I think exist between what we're seeing right now with American politics and the rise of conservatism and like Christianity's ties to it, and like what we saw in ancient Rome, with Constantine and like the mainstreaming of Christianity. Like, Constantine is in power, like he ushers in this like mainstream Christianity is okay. It's no longer, something
it's popular.
It becomes popular.
Yeah.
Exactly. It becomes popular.
Give me some Kristen Chenoweth.
Yeah, it becomes popular. And then once it becomes popular, there's no longer the threat of death attached to it. So now it's easier to be a Christian. So then people become it, and there's nothing weeding the bad, crazy people who are faking it out.
Yeah.
Because like, when there was nothing to gain, the people that were sticking to it and believing in it were the ones that were like that's what I said at the funeral, which was like, the reason it spread so rapidly is like, when Christians were being fed to lions and all this crazy stuff were happening, and they were still rejoicing and still loving, like, people were like, what is wrong with you people? Everything's going to crap.
Can I have that?
Why are you happy? Like, it became this curiosity.
Yeah.
But once all those threats were taken away, Christianity became mainstream, and then you see this evolution slowly and surely of like these weird pseudo mergings of religion with like Greek Orthodoxism and then eventually Roman Catholicism.
Yeah.
And then those things build up to the point where like the church and the state become one and it becomes a mess. And then eventually the Reformation blows that out of the water again.
Yeah.
And I think we're drawing that again because like I think it'd be, I personally think you could argue that these people who were reformers would be viewed by the church as deconstructors because they were born in the Catholic Church. They were seeing the faith and they were going, this doesn't make sense with what I'm reading here. And this doesn't make sense with my moral code. This doesn't make sense with the God I think I know. And like they were deconstructing the faith they had been built around and building a new one and going, this doesn't match and going up against it. And I think we're seeing that now. Like we're seeing a lot of the similarities. We had a populist candidate come in Trump who like was like Constantine. I'm not saying that they're emperors or anything like that. Don't draw those conclusions. They were both popular. They both had ushered in kind of Christianity back into some mainstream like formats. And then there was a lot of resistance. And I think rising out of that is a level of deconstruction, both good and bad, that I think is reacting to the church and going, hey, this doesn't match with everything I know down here. Yeah. And I think that we're kind of entering another like form of that. And there's a lot of other similarities in there that we can get into, but I think those are kind of the core similarities that I see and like why I think deconstruction is worth talking about because of the fact that I think it's here to stay for a little while. And I think it's something that's going to present us a situation where the American church is going to reshape what it looks like going forward. Yeah. And I do think it's going to have to grapple with realistic things and like understand like how to love people and love people in a way that like, yeah, maybe you don't always agree on everything. Maybe we're not going to find a common ground on some issues, but like if the first two commandments are to love God and love people, you don't get to negate one by trying to do the other. Like loving God doesn't mean you get to negate loving people. Like, and I think that's the kicker is you view them as independent commandments and they're not. And that's kind of the big part of it. Like you can't love people and not love God. No, you can't love God and not love people. Like those are, they're merged together. Yeah. And I think that's part of the deconstruction is realizing there's a lot more to this and more complexity to this than we want to understand. Yeah. And we have diluted it down because that's what we do into these little things. And it's like, that's why faith is the way it is now in the United States.
Like sometimes things are not just like one thing or the other. Like there is gray space in between.
There's a little bit of gray space in there because the Bible's not terribly concerned about a lot of those things because that's not its point. It wasn't meant to be some moral guide. Like it's not the basic instructions before leaving Earth.
It's not your what is it?
Road
it's not
map
your
to life. There's maps in it. There are maps in a lot of them in the back, but like
oh my gosh,
it's not meant to be a map for your life. Like if you look at it, first off, it'd be a terrible map.
But then I'm also thinking it makes me think
some
of
awful people in the Bible.
It makes me think of David. Because good Lord, if you read through the Psalms, all of them, one of them's like, oh God, I love you so much. You are just
always near to me.
You are always near. And then the next one's like, why are you so far away? Like, I don't.
As the deer pants for the water.
What do I do? Yeah. And it's like, it's so, but like, that is the perfect depiction or illustration, I should say, of what it's like to be in a relationship with God, to walk in faith, to do, because you're going to have moments where you're like at the peak of your mountaintop and you are like, yes, God, thank you so much. You're right here with me. I feel you like right here. And then there's going to be moments where you are sobbing like a little baby on your knees and you're just, why do you feel, I feel like you don't hear me.
I feel like that's also more for the emotional people because like for logical people it's less like that for us.
See, but for me it is.
Yeah, for someone like me it's not like that at all.
It is like that 100% for me.
Yeah, it constantly is this up and down battle. It like those exist, but it's not, the highs are not as high and the lows are always real low. Yeah. But they're not in the same way. Because I think that's where it becomes a less of an emotional experience. And that's where I think the disconnect is too, where like one person's deconstruction is going to look very different than the other person's deconstruction because of the personality they have. Because it's a very personal and intimate experience.
And you are not toxic for having
deconstruction and doubt.
Yes, you are not. And that is something that I feel like we need to make sure that people know because you feel like you're wrong and you feel like you're doing something wrong when you have questions.
Yeah, because that's the way it's framed.
Yeah. And so that, like, there is nothing wrong with
asking questions.
Yes.
Struggling with faith, and also struggling with your leadership, your church, your like environment. Like those things are places you should question.
If you and it takes me back to, we've talked about this too, and this goes for church leadership. This goes for leadership in general, whether it's like overall of America, whether it's just, you know, in your neighborhood, whether it's, you know, at your church, whatever. It is, if you agree with every single thing that someone says, then you need to take a step back and reevaluate, because people mess up and people say the wrong things and people make mistakes.
Yeah, you should have you should be able to find something you should always agree with.
It is okay to go, that missed the mark. That makes me feel a funny way. Like, maybe I need to go ask questions about that, and I need to go see where they're coming from, because that didn't hit me right. Like, it's okay to do that.
Yes, that's a topic for a whole nother.
It is. But I'm just saying, like, it is a part of that. Yeah. So, but
what are your closing thoughts on deconstruction? Because we're way past time.
Sorry. It is okay, and it is normal, and you are not wrong. You are not a bad person. Like, God does not hate you or anything like that. You know, I would argue that he loves you and he wants you to bring it to him. Like, he wants the conversation, like, you know, and don't be afraid to go to someone that you trust and say, I am struggling. So,
yeah, I think for me, it's deconstruction is a part of your life. It is something that will happen for multiple things, not just your religion, but for like all things that you hold to you. Like, you're going to have them reevaluated and reconstructed over time. And I think it's an important part. It's also an important thing that you shouldn't just be stuck in neutral on. Yeah. Like, if you're not, you should find those answers and seek and like get where you need to be to get through that kind of a process. Yeah. Because, you know, it affects a lot of your life. Like, it comes out in other areas.
It does.
And you know, look, so a lot of people will like go through deconstruction, and at the end I don't believe in any of this. And if that's the case, that's the part of it. But like, you can't be afraid to at least confront that. Yeah. And at least work through that, and work through it with people, like people you trust, and find people you care about. And you know, if you find people who aren't able to work through you with that and they can't be trusted, then, you know, find others. But it is too important of a thing, like, for you to just kind of sit back and take, like, or just kind of walk with, like, oh, I grew up in this, so I just have to follow it. Yeah. Because then you become the person that causes other people to have to go through their deconstruction, because you're just kind of there.
And be loving to others that are walking through it.
Be loving to everyone in general.
Be loving to everyone in general.
Try not to be a jerk.
Yeah.
Unless you have to be. I'm just kidding. Guys, thanks for joining us.
We hope
our discussion helped you.
Yes. Yes.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on the podcast. If you enjoy the 626 podcast, the best thing you can do for us is to share it with a friend and leave a 5-star review. It helps us a lot to get discovered.
And be sure to check us out on Instagram at 626podcast.